Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures, and today we're doing part 89 of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights. We'll be taking a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and compare them to their real life fossil counterparts. So today we've got a very interesting assortment of animals, a lot of small theropods, and we've got a couple herbivores. We've got a very interesting assortment, so I'm quite excited to get stuck into this one. So let's have a look today. I'm starting off with a cool little species, Araripesuchus, I believe you say that, done by Netraptor and Trippy28. So these cute little guys here. Let's see if we can find one that's actually like sitting in the... There's a one in a good light, there he is. Look at you. Oh. Look at that. Look at this funny little guy. Oh no, actually look at this one. That looks good. So this is Araripesuchus. So these guys are an extinct crocodiliform that existed during the Cretaceous of the late Mesozoic. We know what the Cretaceous is, from early to late. It actually lived potentially for quite a long time, or we just don't know, have really confirmed dates, between 125 and 66 million years ago, so potentially went extinct at the time of the dinosaurs. So this is a type of crocodilian that was really common during the Mesozoic called a Notosuchian. So they were a group that basically took a lot of those little mammal niches. They had, like little ones with like rabbit teeth, and Simasuchus from Prehistoric Planet, that's a great example of a Notosuchian. So very interesting, like complex teeth and more land-like lifestyles and things like that, which is quite cool. So this is a really interesting animal. It's Araripesuchus has got multiple species as well. It's actually got, I think, 7 species. So the main species that we're talking about is Wergeri. So that was estimated to be about 81 centimeters or 22 inches long. But there was another species that was Ratoides, which was actually about 1 meter long. So there's a variety within the different species. The way you can tell them apart is they've got the laterally bulged edges of the snout. So you can see they've got this kind of bulges there, with the bulge being most prominent on the maxillary tooth, so right at the front there. Their snout and premaxilla are smoother than most crocodiliforms, as you look at a crocodile skull, they've got lots of little holes of foramina in them. These guys are quite smooth. And there is some kind of 7 valid species, and they differ a little bit, but they mostly are pretty similar. The Ratoides got its name because it has its first entry teeth that look like incisors and look like the elongated incisors of rodents. But other species, they do have some like little differences between them. Nothing too drastic though. All species, though, have relatively large orbits. As you can see, they've got those big eyes. Obviously, they have thin osteoderms across the body, covering in multiple rows, very similar to the crocodilians. In each side of the tail are a single row of osteoderms that were paired ventrally, like that. And they were not strongly keeled, along with the long limbs, and then much more adapted for running on land than in swimming in the water. So the name of the species was coined in 1959 and described as the type species, which was Araripesuchus gomezi, which was a Notosuchian from the Santa group of the Arab Basin in Brazil, and the holotype was kind of described as that genus, so that's the holotype. And then another one was found in South America as well. A second species found in Africa, which is quite interesting, in 1981. And Patagonosuchus is found in Patagonia. There's another one from the Kem beds in Sahara, so they did have a range quite a bit, and even one found in Madagascar. So they range from South America, Africa, and then Madagascar. So they did have quite an interesting range. And the African species was described in the same paper as Caprisuchus, Lagosuchus, and Anatosuchus, where it got the name rat croc, boar croc, pancake croc, and duck croc, respectively. So this was called rat croc in that way. But as mentioned, 2024, there's about 7 different species, with Gomezi being the type species, and there's not too much difference between them. They're originally considered in the group Uruguaysuchidae, which is a group of really interesting Notosuchians, but other papers have actually put them outside of Notosuchians, and a group called Neosuchia, which includes the monocrocodiles, but they do now recognize them as a basal, or one of the more basal members of the group Notosuchia, which is interesting. But they've actually thought also to be a sister taxon with a Natosaurus. Sorry, my voice is a bit croaky. There we are, that's better. So I mentioned it's been recovered from the continents of South America and Africa, and suggesting a Gondwanian origin for the species, so they would have been early enough that they would have been able to basically walk from Madagascar to South America, and then diverged as they split, and then split into these multiple species. The various species evolved from the same stock of their general area, and then irradiated out, so that's irradiated out, or kind of went out and lived in those places. But yeah, quite cool. Really, really cool. Love a little Nosuchian. They're a really cool little animal. In terms of its diet, as we mentioned, it's considered rat crocs. Probably a little bit more carnivorous, or maybe a little bit more herbivorous, because we do have herbivorous crocodiles, don't forget, so with Saimasuka. So it probably was a little bit more of an omnivore, potentially. But yeah, really, really cool little guy. Nice to see some not much well-known, or some non-dinosaur Mesozoic animals getting some love too. So we'll let them run off and do their thing. Again, done by Netraptor and Trippy28. Next up, we've got by Gushy Gore. We've got something that's really cool. We've got a really cool animal, Hadrosaurus. And they're panicking. That's alright, well, it's because they've got predators in there. We won't worry about that. Let them run off and calm down. Of course they do that. Anyway, let's see if we can find one. Oh, you look like you're in a good posture. So this is, as I mentioned, Hadrosaurus, which means bulky lizard. These guys are a genus of hadrosaurid ornithopod dinosaur that lived in North America during the late Cretaceous, and is from now what is known as the Woodbury Formation in New Jersey, from about 83 to 77 million years ago. And the holotype specimen was found in the fluvial marine sediments, which means the corpse of the animal was actually transported out to sea where it died, and washed out to sea. They were large animals, reaching about 7 to 8 meters, or about 23 to 26 feet, and about 2 to 4 tons, with most elements that are preserved being quite robust. So these guys were kind of really thick and robust animals, with keratinous beaks to help eat, lots of complex plants and things like that. And is the only species of its genus, the Falkleri, and is known from a single specimen containing much of the skeleton and parts of the skull. And it's collected in 1858 from the Woodbury Formation, New Jersey, actually representing the first dinosaur species known from more than isolated teeth to be identified in North America. So it's quite important little bit of history in this animal here. And using radiometric dating of bivalve shells from the same formation, they've been dated between 83 to 77 million years old. In 1858, the only known specimen has become the first ever dinosaur skeleton to be mounted, and in 1991, it was named the official state dinosaur of New Jersey. So as I mentioned, it was found by John Ishtad Hopkins, who found in a mole pit on the Cooper River in New Jersey, where he found these large bones. And it actually became a historical landmark now, where they found Hadrosaurus. So they Falk contacted paleontologist Joseph Leddy, who together actually described it and put together and found it, and described it as Hadrosaurus falki, as honor of his collaborator, so it's the bulky lizard. So basically Falk's big lizard is its name, or bulky lizard. And look quite similar to those of Iguanodon. And actually the American Civil War actually delayed its publication, so that shows you how old this is. And originally it was reconstructed as a biped, but now we have much more hadrosaurs to reconstruct it. We know that it was much more of a quadruped, and things like that. So actually they've actually updated the mount and things like that, so that's quite cool. But yeah, we'll carry on. In terms of its description, as I mentioned, large animal, 2 to 8 meters and about 2 to 4 tons. It had a shortened pectoral crest, which is interesting. And as in most hadrosaurs, you can see its forelimbs were not as heavily built. I don't know what's up with my throat today. I think that's just because I was dealing in the pollen and dirt yesterday. But anyway, they were not as heavily built as the hind limbs, but they were long enough to be used in standing or movement. A holotype was a relatively large animal at the time of death, with about a metre-long femur, which is interesting. And despite the fact that the family Hadrosauridae is actually named after this, it's a type genus of this the group. The skeleton lacks a skull and is long viewed as too incomplete to complete the Hadrosaurs. It was considered as a nomen dubium. However, the evaluation of the fossil material actually noted several distinct characteristics to allow the genus Hadrosaurus to remain valid. And it's actually been traditionally served at the basis of the large family Hadrosauridae, which is a group that includes the Lambeosauridae, which include things like Lambeosaurus and things like that. However, changing views have actually changed it a bit. So in 2008, they were found to be more primitive than either of these Lambeosaurians or Hadrosaurians. So a bit more basal in the tree, which makes sense. So they are very basal Hadrosauridae before the split between, the Saurolophines and the Lambeosaurians. So the Saurolophines include things like Edmontosaurus, Parasaurolophus, things like that. While Lambeosaurians include things like Syntarsus and, not Parasaurolophus, I'm thinking Syntarsus and Lambeosaurus, of course. Yeah, really cool. Very interesting as well. They actually did osteology on the bones, and they actually found all sorts of cancers and osteoblasts on the specimen, and found them on several other species of hadrosaurs, which is quite cool. So these tumors may have been caused by, environmental factors or potentially genetic. And the paleoecology, so it was found in marine sediments. Obviously didn't live, it wasn't a marine animal. So when the animal died, the water transported it to the sea, and that's where it kind of went out and then got buried. So we kind of know, and it would have lived on land, even though it was found in a marine formation, or marine sediments. But it's still a really, really cool animal. So yeah, it's a cool bit of history there with these species, and you can see it's even been updated with all the correct anatomy. It's got the proper toes and everything. So yeah, Gushy Gore did a wonderful job with this one. So next up, we got by Glitch and JWE2 we have got a new dinosaur. We have got Lokiceratops. We'll have a look at you. Here's Lokiceratops. How really awesome to get mods so quickly after an animal's release. So Lokiceratops, which means a Loki horned face. These guys are an extinct genus of ceratopsian dinosaur from the late Cretaceous, the Campanian from the Judith River Formation of Montana. And this genus contains a single species, Lokiceratops ragniformes, which basically means Loki's horned face, reindeer form or reindeer-like. Known basically from the skull and a partial skeleton. And the four other ceratopsians are known from the strategic interval, so it seems like these guys were very, very diverse in that time. So Lokiceratops holotype was actually discovered by Mark Ettman in 2019 at the Loki Quarry in the Judith River Formation near Milk River in Hill County, northern Montana. It was found disarticulated, but association, much of the material exhibited some degree of plastic deformation and compression. And the holotype contains many bones of the skull, also some vertebrae, some caudal vertebrae as well, some scapula, the pelvic girdle, things like that. So it is pretty complete, considering most ceratopsians are typically only the skull. Following discovery, it was transported to Fossil Logic, where it was basically, prepared. And it was prepared through 2021 before being moulded for casts, and their lifelike skull was reconstructed by filling in the gaps and, fixing it up. The skull cast was ready to display in the Natural History Museum of Utah and Salt Lake City, and then kind of found that things like that. And then in 2024, just this year, probably only a month or so ago, it was reviewed and actually published. So its name's Lokiceratops ragniformes. So the genus name Lokiceratops refers to Loki, who's a Norse god, and Ceratops, so it's Loki horned face. And then the species name Ragniformes refers to the genus Araripesuchus, which is the genus of caribou or reindeer, depending on where you are, what they're called. Whose antlers seem to be bilaterally asymmetrical. So it's because if you look at their horns on there, you can see they're not quite symmetrical. I think they're reconstructed here symmetrical, but I imagine some of the part of the fossilization may have made them a bit unsymmetrical. But there is a little bit of a difference between them. You can see that kind of little one there, big one there. But yeah, that's kind of weird because they're not symmetrical. So, and it actually is very rare for animals to not be symmetrical, bilaterally symmetrical, because they basically look the same on both sides, but these look different. So yeah, that's kind of where it got its name from. So the fossil material is actually considered to be a little bit larger than Medusaceratops, so it is definitely a big animal. Its the skull has a basal length of about just under a meter and a total length of just under just about 2 meters. And the holotype itself would likely have been about 6.7 meters or about 22 feet long and weighed about 5 tons. And actually one of the largest known centrosaurians, so it's quite a big animal, which is interesting. And in terms of its classification, it fits within the centrosaurians. So you have the centrosaurians and chasmosaurians. The centrosaurians are things like, Centrosaurus, Styracosaurus, but chasmosaurians include things like Chasmosaurus, Triceratops, things like that. So this is definitely a member of the centrosaurian, and is believed to be in the group Albertosaurians, so quite basal in that group, so Albertosaurini. So it's related to animals such as Albertoceratops and Medusaceratops, which is quite interesting. And in terms of environment, the Loki quarry had quite a lot of sandstones, things like that. So, and we actually find a lot of gar scales and mollusks. So it was potentially quite a swampy, forested area, which is quite cool. But yeah, we know that's kind of what it looked like, and it's really cool. And there's actually some characteristics that actually suggest that this may actually be a fully mature Medusaceratops. So it might end up, being lumped into Medusaceratops. This has proven to be an adult Medusaceratops, but I think that's kind of interesting. So it's either its own species or potentially adult Medusaceratops, very similar to how we had all these. We have a pretty good growth series of Triceratops, and it actually matches how the growth series are like. So this could potentially just be an adult Medusaceratops. So I like thinking about that, and it's quite cool. But it may hopefully stick for a distinct species for now. I guess that's always like most things, might require more study. But then Lokiceratops will obviously be lumped into Medusaceratops. But yeah, it's still cool. We're gonna run off, do their thing. We're gonna have a look at another really cool animal there. So next up we have got. So this is done by Liv, who's actually done like a little bit of an extra pack for us, which is quite cool. So some animals that didn't quite make it into the remasters that they've just done. We've got all the paleomedics. This is by Live and Game Videos for Life. We have got Cyats, which is actually the wrong name. It's actually Megaposaurus at the moment, but we'll carry on. Oh, that's not what we wanted. Let's see if we can find one. Here we are. We'll have a look at you since you're standing there all pretty. So this is, as I mentioned, Meganoposaurus, which means big dead lizard. So these are a genus of Coelophysid. Oh, it's turning. I hate that. Oh, that's not what I wanted. There we are, that's better. I saw that turning. Anyway, so this is a relative of Coelophysids. So there's a Coelophysid that lived about 188 million years ago, that lived in the early Jurassic of now Africa. And it was a medium-sized bipedal carnivore, grew to about 2 meters long or so, just about 7 feet, and weighed about 13 kilograms. So the original name given to it was Syntarsus, which is now to be preoccupied by a beetle. So they actually renamed it to Meganoposaurus. In some classified it actually as a species within the genus Coelophysis, but it's actually been challenged a lot, so it seems like this is a much more valid interpretation. It's just causing it Meganoposaurus. So the first fossil of these guys were found in 1963 by a group of students in the Northley School in Southcore Farm in Zimbabwe, which was then Rhodesia, and was shown the fossils by school staff in 1964, and over several weeks they excavated it all. The type specimen is actually well preserved, really merely missing only the skull and cervical vertebrae. Another one, they actually found specimens intermixed with the bones of prosauropod or sporopodomorph, or something like Massospondylus. But yeah, there actually is believed to be some There's a second species of Megaloposaurus actually thought to be found from Arizona as well. So that might be another species there. But there's another species, Rhododendron, potentially from South Africa. So there could be multiple species or just one. But yeah, we know that they lived potentially mostly in Africa, but potentially an American one as well. So in terms of their size, they measure up to about 2 meters, about 7 feet, and weighed about 13 kilograms. Quite lean body, and they actually had legs very similar to that of a secretary bird, with shorter hands and actually 4 digits on their hand, unlike most theropods. That shows how basal they are. And the bones of at least 30 M. rhodesius individuals have been found in the beds of Zimbabwe, which actually have been found in quite a large time span in the early Jurassic, meaning they were either highly successful, or there are flucose animals and closely related animals all currently assigned to Coelophysis. So Coelophysis could potentially be a bit of a waste bucket taxon. But also, as I mentioned, there's the kind deformation one that was the specimen discovered in 1982 in America. It seems to be a subadult gracile individual, and they seem to potentially be similar in that regard. So they are a member of Coelophysidae, so they are Coelophysordia. So they are in the family Coelophysorine, so they are related to Coelophysis a bit more closely. Some of its relatives, the Signusaurus and Coelophysis, that seems to be what they're related to. And in terms of their kind of provenance, so as I mentioned, they've been found in the Upper Elliot Formation in South Africa. And the Upper Elliot is quite a rich formation, has things like Massospondylus and Evaganosaurus, Heterodontosaurus, and Leslosaurus. So quite a rich formation. Was it sphenodonts and crocodilians, so it would have been quite rich there. And some other little bits about them. So age determination actually on the specimens of Rhodesiensis actually suggests they were about 7 years old, and they seem to have quite variable growth. So there were some specimens that were later in their immaturity phase, where small adults were completely mature. So there's quite a variety there. And this indicates they're supposed to present as distinct morphs, so it's usually just individual variation. So there isn't like a male and female or any kind of morph. It's just individuals. Some of individuals really are small adults, some are really big adults. That's what happens. But very interesting as well. Feeding and diet. The weak joints in the jaw was actually suggested they were scavengers. But actually, one of the first dinosaurs was portrayed with feathers, even though there's no direct evidence of them having feathers, and this was evidence they may have hunted in packs. And they have large seclural rings, which suggests they may be nocturnal. And what's really cool as well, we do have some, because we have a lot of specimens, we do have some injuries. So we do have one where the tibia and metatarsus have been observed, healed fractures. And there's also suggested it may have been come from basically any sort of injury. And this fluctuating symmetry actually would have been put the animal under stress and would have impacted the quality of life of the animal until it died. So that's a little bit sad. But yeah, really, really cool. Nice to see this cool species getting some love. I'd recommend probably changing the genus name, because the genus name is not accurate anymore. Yeah, really did a good job. It's nice to cover, because I know a few people have been asking to cover some live mods. But yeah, I've actually managed to cover them now in some extent, and we'll carry on with the rest of the pack. So we're going to be skipping the pack for a little bit, but we're going to go over to see Trippy, who has made ourselves a new ichthyosaur. So this is Pervushovisaurus, which is a really cool one. So let's have a look at this guy. So let's let you have a swim. Actually, looks quite nice. I quite like this one. Let's have a look at you. You could probably look, yeah, there. So this is Pervushovisaurus, is a platygerine ichthyosaur from the late Cretaceous. So it actually lived quite late into the Cretaceous. It's from the Santov region of Western Russia, and actually found in France and the UK. So it's got quite a wide range. So this was originally considered a subgenus of Platygerrinus, but is now sufficiently distinct as a type species of Platygerrinus, but it is a full genus. So now it's considered its own species. The type species is Pervushovisaurus bancovensis, which includes a partial skull, and then there was another additional species of I think it's Platygerrinus, was actually from England and France, had been lumped into this one. So there's Claplodon and Calapophy as well. So they've been kind of lumped into this genus as well. So Platygerrinus has actually been lumped into split into multiple genera now. So in terms of its size and everything, this was about a medium-sized ichthyosaur, so it got about 19 feet, or about 5.8 meters long, and is very interesting because it is one of those later ichthyosaurs that we don't hear too much about, because we always hear about the Jurassic ones, but not the Cretaceous ones, before they went extinct. So they have a very interesting skull, very long mouth, things like that. And yeah, most of the characteristics that you tell apart from its relatives and things like that are very, very small anatomical details, but you can tell them apart. But what's really, really cool, yeah, it's nice to see Cretaceous ichthyosaur getting some love. And you can see kind of that really dolphin-like shape there, and yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. Love these guys. So let them run off and do their thing. We're going back to the extras, small theropods. We're going to have a look at a really cool animal here. We've got Imperotor, so let's have a look at Imperotor. So this is a dinosaur with a little bit of an interesting history. And it does it again. Can it just not swivel around for a bit? You'd think they'd fix that already, but anyway. So this is Imperotor. So which names means powerful warrior. So these guys are possibly unilagine Paravian theropod from the Maastrichtian, so from the late Cretaceous, of what is now the James Ross Island of Antarctica. And it's actually one of only 2 non-avian theropods found in Antarctica, crossing over from when the landmass was Gondwana. So it was originally described as a Dromaeosaur in 2017, and then a fossil was formally described as a new genus in 2019, and later searches reported more bones, including teeth and skull bones. It was actually initially suggested as well is that Imperotor would have been one of the largest known Paravians, close in size to things like Utahraptor and Ostroraptor, but subsequent anatomical revisions actually suggest it may have been smaller, comparable in size to Deinonychus, which is cool. It was discovered from the Cape Lamb member strata in the Snow Hill Formation, which bears a variety of other fossils from the time, including things like Imperosaurus, which is an orthonopod, including and also a menagerie of things like Mosasaurs, Plesiosaurs, and pterosaurs. And also a bird, there's an Intucta avis, which was actually found there. So it was first found in 2003 in a fossil hunting expedition mounted by the University of California Museum of Paleontology to the islands. And the island, these date to the early Maastrichtian, so about 71 million years ago is believed to be where it was found. And they found a bits of, the tibia and things like that. And then, as I mentioned, they have found more. The holotype specimen measures about 45 centimeters or 18 inches in length, which means initially would put it about 2 meters tall, comparing it to the size of the largest Utahraptors and things like Utahraptor and Ostroraptor. But now the measurements have been critiqued, and they suggest it's a bit smaller, so having a body length of about, revised body length of about 2 to 3 meters, instead of being like 2 to 3 meters tall. So yeah, it would have been a little bit smaller, but still quite cool. And it seems to might still have its it doesn't really have its the characteristic raptor claw going on there. It does a little bit, but nowhere near as much as it used to. So you can see it's walking on the ground now. Anyway, so it's only known from its fragments of the hind limb, but as I mentioned, there has been a little bit more found. So most reconstructions have been kind of based off close relatives. But also there's it shares its trait with the 4th digit, which is the incomplete ungual having a flexor heel, which is similar to the Roman Para-avian bellor, which was thought to be a Dromaeosaur. So before it was officially described, it was considered to be a Dromaeosaur, but now it's considered to be more of a Para-avian. So this modified phylogeny kind of did that, and then they actually, again, they consider it to be a posse unilagine, so related to things like Ostroraptor and Broetoraptor as well. So it has changed a little bit, so that's kind of the most modern interpretation, is it being an unilagine. But yeah, very interesting environment. So this would, at the time, Antarctica was not freezing cold, it was colder, but it was still, had lots of forests, more probably similar to things like places like New Zealand and Tasmania today, probably a bit more of a closer comparison. So these guys would have been lived on in the islands and stuff, The fossil composition has actually showed there be a lot of volcanic ash. So the worth Antarctica would have been without ice. There still would have been like glaciers somewhere, and potentially like ice mats on the ocean. But most of the time, it would have been conifers and things like that. The animals in Antarctica would have actually still had to deal with the long periods of darkness like they would today, but it wouldn't be as cold. So there would have been, what's interesting, they actually show the fossils show some weathering and abrasion, indicated by the show minimal transport compared to the holotype of Antarctic powder, which was floated out to sea and then buried with marine sediments. In looking at pollen, that shows that they had lots of they actually found the ancestors of sunflowers and daisies there. Also, all sorts of animal plants like peat bogs, moss, and club moss, and things like that. But as I mentioned, we did have things like the ornithopod Morosaurus and Epsilopodont ornithopod, Antarctoavis, Tunipharosaurus, Pliopodocarpus mosasaurus, and several types of fish and ammonites and things like that found there. So it was a very rich formation. Even though it was down at the bottom of the world in Antarctica, there was a lot of life down there, especially at that time when, Antarctica was not freezing cold, not just a giant glacier over the top of it. So yeah, that's quite cool. So we'll let these guys run off and do their thing. Next up, we're going to have to air release these ones because it's a bit of a bug. But we've got here Dromaeosaurus. We love Dromaeosaurus. So let's have a look.
Asset requirement collection. Asset collection request received. Heading to pick up the asset. En route to pick up the asset.
So we're going to have to, drop all these guys off, sadly. Anyway, but we've got a Dromaeosaurus. We'll let them run off. We've got one with the Walking with Dinosaurs. Let's look at this one. Here's the one I want to look at. So let's have a look at this guy. So this is the Dromaeosaurus from Walking with Dinosaurs, which actually translates not too bad with the feathers, I think. But anyway, so this is Dromaeosaurus, or running lizard. So these are a genus of Dromaeosaurid theropod dinosaur that lived in the late Cretaceous, about the late Campanian to Maastrichtian, sometime between 80 and 69 million years ago in Alberta, Canada, and in the western United States. So the type species is Dromaeosaurus albertanensis, which was described by William Delamathium and Barnum Brown in 1922, and has also been unearthed in the Hell Creek Formation, Horseshoe Canyon Formation, Dinosaur Park Formation, though teeth from the attributed genus have been found in the Prince Creek Formation as well, and Dromaeosaurus is type genus of the group Dromaeosauridae and Dromaeosaurinine, which have similar characteristics, and potentially could be the closest relative of Dakotaraptor, which is very interesting, and is similar in size to things like Velociraptor. So very interesting, despite being, relatively widespread in pop culture, the usage of complete mounds and things like that, it's actually poorly known from actual fossils, which is interesting as well. First known was found by Barnum Brown in 1914 in the Red Deer River on behalf of the American Museum of Natural History. There was some also found in Alberta, Canada, and the finder, which is a holotype, was a partial skull, a mandible, two hyoids, and some other fragmentary bits. And then in 1922, it was described as Dromaeosaurus albertensis, so it's basically the runner lizard from Alberta. And there has been several species described. Some have been lumped to their own, described as different things. So one called Hadrosaurus was described as well. Other genera have been lumped and split, but the only one that's really stood the test of time is Dromaeosaurus albertensis. So in terms of its size, it's a medium-sized carnivore, so it's about 2 meters long and about 16 kilograms. Its mouth was full of sharp teeth, where it almost looked like a sickle jaw. And as I mentioned, it lived during the Campanian. However, there is some fragmentary remains that suggest this genus may have lived into the Hell Creek and Lance formations as well. And it actually had a relatively robust skull, as you can see there, with a deep snout. Its teeth were also rather large and shaped with curves as well, which is interesting. In terms of classification, it was originally placed in its own family, Dromaeosaurinine, or the Dentosaurinine. So it shared many features with Velociraptor, but they don't find not that closely related to them anymore. So there's Eodromaeosaura, which include things like Bambiraptor, and then you have the Velociraptorines, which include things like Velociraptor Allosaurus, and then Dromaeosaurinines include Deinonychus, Utahraptor, and Achillobeta, and Dromaeosaurus. So it's kind of where it lives in there. And yeah, Dromaeosaurinine is actually believed to be potentially the closest relative of Dakotaraptor. So yeah, one way it kind of is different from most of its relatives. It's a little bit more bulky for its size. Like Velociraptor is a very long skull. These guys are very deep skull. And its teeth actually tend to be more heavily worn than things like Ornitholestes. So the jaws were used for crushing rather than tearing and simply slicing flesh. And Theron et al. Actually found that Dromaeosaurus had a bite nearly 3 times as powerful as that of a Velociraptor, suggesting it relied more on its jaws rather than its sickle claw to kill its prey. And its study determined that centered around Savinia, Dromaeosaurus was actually found compared to the former than Alioramus, which is very interesting. So they're thought to be diurnal predators. And in terms of feeding behavior, it's actually thought to be typical of Coelurosaurian theropods using puncture and pull methods. Study of the wear pattern suggests that these guys had similar wear pattern things of tyrannosaurs and troodontids. However, microwear suggests that Dromaeosaurs actually preferred larger prey than troodontids, so when they share environment, so that's a bit of partitioning there. And such differences in his diet allow the theropods and live in the same habitat and not worry too much about competition. And the same study also suggests that Dromaeosaurus and Ornitholestes likely included bone in their diet and were better able to handle the stresses of attacking struggling prey than troodontids, which had weaker jaws, which would have preferred softer prey, things like carrion and invertebrates. And this feeding strategy and able to handle struggling prey was actually a feature shared with Tyrannosaurids such as Gulgosaurus, which is actually analysed in this study along with the small theropods. So that's quite cool, a little bit about Dromaeosaurus. So let them run off and do their thing. We'll have a look at the different skins as they're laid out. So that's the Walking with Dinosaurs one. We love a Walking with Dinosaurs. We've got Beasts of the Mesozoic as well, I think. Depending which one that is. So that's one of the base skins. So I think this is one of the Beasts of the Mesozoic ones. Let's see if I can check it. Yeah, Beasts of the Mesozoic. Really cute. Another one of those base ones. So there's also cosmetics added in, to kind of fit more popular culture things. Like there's a mention of the Dinosaurs one, which is pretty cool. I do like that. There's another one there. No, that's not the one I want to look at. Pretty nice colours on them, eh? I actually think Liv did a great job with these. Especially giving them feathers and things, making them... And I love the feather design as well. This feather design looks quite cool. I like the two that stick out. So yeah, good job. So from this group, last but certainly not least, we've got Vallibonavenatrix. Hopefully we can release them. So instead of a Dromaeosaurus, we've got a Spinosaur now. So this is Vallibonavenatrix. Which means Vanabon Huntress, out of the town it was found in. So this is a genus of Spinosaurid from the early Cretaceous, the Aquilas de Morena Formation in Castello, Spain. And the type specimen, the only species, is Vallibonatrix carni, which is known for a partial skeleton. So during the late 1980s and early 1990s, amateur fossil collector Juan Canto Fauna actually found the bones in various localities in Espora National Park. And this one was found in Valbona, he found numerous vertebrates from the Mesozoic, which were dinosaur fossils. Former house, he's in a private collection. He actually, with the Genostart of Vallesalina, in 2007, a Spanish paleontologist Ferdinand Gómez Fernandez actually published a description based on these bones, which include things like, their neck, vertebrae, dorsal vertebrae, sacrum, caudal vertebrae, ribs, ischium, things like that, actually described it. And in 2019, it was described as its own genus, species of Spinosaurid, Vallibonatrix carni, which was named, Ventrix as the hunter. And the specific name honors Carno Forno, who discovered it, and is actually one of the most complete Spinosaurid specimens recovered from the Iberian Peninsula. And there's actually quite a few Spinosaurids coming from the Iberian Peninsula, things like Ibenospinus, Camelosaurus, Protolanthus, and Vallibonatrix, which is quite interesting. So you can see it's a moderately sized bipedal predator, and its upwards projecting neural spines on its dorsal vertebrae were moderately tall, and very similar to things like Ichthyovenator, so it may have had that tall tail, kind of like Spinosaurus, and had a very fan-like shape, and similar to the Spinosaurus, Vallibonavenatrix. And similarities between the morphology suggest, that there have been elongated spines forming a sail on its back, as seen in some other Spinosaurs. So it is potentially got that spine, and you can see it's got that long tail there, so that's quite cool. So in 2019, it was found to be related to Spinosaurus. So there's two subfamilies within the Spinosauridae. There's Spinosaurini and Baryonychine. So it actually was thought to be closer to the European Baryonychines, such as Baryonyx. It's actually found to be really closely related to Spinosaurines, things like Spinosaurus and Irritator from southwestern Gondwana, and the Asian genus Ichthyovenator. So it's very interesting how, even though it is from Europe, where it's closer, it's more closely related to Spinosaurus. So it shows there was a lot of either Spinosaurids were a lot older than we realized, and they were kind of diverging, or they were able to move quite well across the continents, which is quite cool. However, they have looked back at it since then. Colleagues actually suggest they actually were outside of both Baryonychine and Spinosaurine, and being the most basal kind of member of the Spinosaurids, or potentially a member of the Baryonychine, though its phylogenetic place is unstable, so it kind of can change here to there. But really, the cool place it lived in was from the Achilles de Malo Formation, which was from the Bamarian stage of the early Cretaceous, so between 129 to 125 million years ago. It coexisted with some really cool animals like a Morellodon and Iguanodon bastiliensis, some sauropods, and some actually Patalictus, which is a fellow Spinosaurid, so that's another really cool animal it lived with. So yeah, we're going to let that run off and do its thing. So last but certainly not least, we've got a really cool animal here. We've got, done by Netraptor and Trippy28, we have got Anzu again. So another Anzu. So I'm not going to go into too much detail because, of course, I've already covered this animal. But we're going to have a look at, what's a really cool one? I like this one. This is really nice colors. But yeah, this is Anzu. So Anzu is a bird which is based off a bird-like demon in ancient Mesopotamian culture. These are genus of Chasarognathid dinosaur from North Dakota, South Dakota, and Montana that lived in the late Cretaceous, or the Upper Maastrichtian, between 67 and 66 million years ago in what is known as the Hell Creek. So the type and only species Anzu willeri is actually known from numerous specimens that preserve cranial and postcranial elements. It was named in 2014, and is actually considered one of the coolest new species. So several large skeletons from the Maastrichtian Hell Creek from Montana was originally referred to as Crichtonistes, what were thought to be a new species, and then in 1998, they actually found the holotype specimen, and then they kind of found these fossils and found, they're actually quite good specimens, and we managed to describe a species of them. And it actually was notable, this genus is quite notable for being the first well-preserved evidence of a North American Oviraptorosaur. And for almost 100 years, the presence of Oviraptorosaurs was really known from a few little bits here and there, but this is actually quite well-preserved. And then, as I mentioned, 2014, it was described as a genus. So 2006, they kind of managed to realize and have the skeleton of the same species, and we managed to describe it in 2014. So in terms of its description, you can see it's got a toothless beak and quite a prominent crest, long arms and a slender with relatively straight claws, long legs and a short tail. It was believed to have measured about 3.5 to 3.75, 11, 12 feet long, up to about a meter and a half or 5 feet at the hips, and about 200 kilograms of body mass, which makes it one of the largest, among the largest North American Oviraptorosaurs, or potentially up with the largest Oviraptorosaurs. With the type specimen, Anzu describes several morphisms. I won't go into that because it's a lot of very rich technical jargon. But in terms of who it's related to, it is a member of the Oviraptorosauria and a member of the Cagnathidae, and it's actually thought to be a sister species to Cagnathus. So it is related to things like Gigantoraptor and Leptorhynchus, things like that. It has also been expected that Oviraptors would be found in North America, as well as documented specimens in Asia. But what is really interesting was thought that there was a land connection, but discovery Anzu indicate that North American Oviraptorosaurs are relatively more closely related to each other than their relatives in Asia. So that's another really interesting way to show that how dinosaurs related to each other. So North American Araripesuchus were related most closely to each other than their counterparts in Asia. So in terms of paleobiology, it was probably an omnivore or a herbivore, although its beak is not as heavily constructed as a lot of the Asian Oviraptorans, so it probably had a little bit of a softer diet. And also the fossils were found in mudstone, part of ancient floodplains, so likely lived in very different from the arid to semi-arid conditions that they lived to in Asia. So these guys would have lived in a much more wetter formation. And while a number of features of some of those are modern birds, it obviously went extinct at the end of the Cretaceous. And its bird-like features were thought to be because of convergent evolution, or, two animals, independently evolving the same feature for the same reason. So they had a big beak, because they were eating things like birds were, and which is quite cool. And the purpose of the large crest of all these Oviraptorosaurs, but Anzu in particular, is unclear. It's very large and paper thin. It's thought to have been compared to the cassowary, which is an Australian bird, which has quite a big display feature. It's thought to potentially be for display, attracting mates. And there's also evidence of injuries as well, so they potentially could have been fighting each other or injured by predators. So, cassowaries can be quite aggressive, so they could have fought each other for mates. Things like that, so that's another very interesting thing that they could have been doing. But yeah, another really cool animal. I know I've already covered this one not too long ago, but it's cool to see more people attempting the same animal, and I think this one's a little bit more accurate in terms of its anatomy and also size. But Snapraptor always does such a great job. I'm going to have a look at this. Oh, that's cool. Anyway, I think we're finished there. So, yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. So, I'm going to thank everyone, thank Raptor, Trippy8, Gushy, Glitch, Liv, Game Videos for Life, all of you. You all did really good jobs with these mods, and especially Liv, with the extras. You did a really good job. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified of learning things. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.